Good morning, everybody. I'm Dustin Rawls, your tour guide this morning. Thanks for joining us on this Friday for our Webinars in Tennessee program. I know many of you got the reminders and updates, but we pivoted pretty quickly because of a conflict this week. This was originally supposed to be a direct admissions and Tennessee Promise session, but we had to switch gears quickly, call in the B team to talk about call it no, it's the A team. But we're switching gears. We invited James and Jana to join us, and we're talking about all TELS stuff this morning. So thanks for joining us. I will let you all know up front, because of the minor reshuffle, we will have a direct admissions specific webinar, a one-off, on March the 27th. You'll get all the communications to sign up for that, to hear all about us concluding year one of direct admissions, pivoting towards statewide launch in year two, all the wonderful things we're doing behind the scenes. But it's today we're going to really focus on all of our TELS programs from our TELS professionals and experts. And so what we'll do to get started, I'm going to allow all three of our guests today to introduce themselves, tell a little bit about what they do, and the formatting. I provided each of our guests a number of questions to kind of spark conversation along the way, but we really were thinking that we'd like to open it up to all of you, that if you have questions regarding your programs or best practices or anything that comes up along the way, we really would like to utilize the chat feature today, and you all chat in questions that any of our panelists could cover, to make sure that we don't leave anything on the table, because there's a whole bunch of experience and wisdom and expertise in the room today to be able to share with you all about what's going on across Tennessee. So let's kick it off. I'd always like to start with James first, but I just can't do it. Jenn, would you like to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, how you got to THEC and all the things, and then we'll go down the list with the rest of our panelists.
Sure. Jenn Byrd. I am the Senior Director of State Aid Programs. Have been in this role since November. I actually came from Nashville State. I was financial aid director there, and then was working in financial aid at Jackson State prior to that. So I've been in the financial aid arena for a while now, over 28 years. Have a good bit of experience with the state aid program, so I was really excited for this role. I oversee the TSAA, Tennessee Promise, TCAT Reconnect, Tennessee Reconnect, our loan forgiveness programs and things like that. So definitely looking forward to the conversation today. And back to you, Dustin.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us, Jenn. We're glad to have you. Welcome to the team. You're such a wonderful addition. So James, you will be last. Jana, would you mind introducing yourself, telling us a little bit how you got to THEC, what you do? Tell us all about yourself and what you do.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jana Stephens. I am the program coordinator for the dual enrollment grant, along with the foster child tuition grant, middle college scholarship, Helping Heroes grant. I think that covers it. I have been with THEC since 2004. So going on quite a few years here. Looking forward to the discussion with you all, and can't wait to hear what you all have to say about what we've got going on.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Last but not least, definitely not least, James Snider, talk to the people.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I do know some of the names and faces that I'm not seeing. James Snider, I'm currently the Senior Director for Lottery Scholarship Programs. I have been with THEC since 2007. I started on the outreach team with Jason C. Then I transitioned over to lead our Tennessee Promise Scholarship Program in 2015. So I have done a little bit of everything. Currently, in my current role, I administer the Lottery Scholarship Program. I really just am still learning from Jana on how to administer and just support her in the dual enrollment grant program, Wilder Navy Technical Skills Grant, any lottery funded program, along with, in addition, Neb McWhorter Honor Scholarship through Journey Ellison, who's our program coordinator for that program, and Dependent Children Scholarship as well. Looking forward to this conversation. So I will stop there and we'll kick it off with next steps.
So thanks, James. So here's how I'd like to consider kicking it off. It's going to be a question for all of you, just to try to lay the groundwork to for all of us. All of you speak about your specific areas, how they all work together, how they should work together. They do work together for students' benefit across Tennessee. So all of your programs, you can highlight specifically what you do, but more conversationally to start the ball rolling about how all of your programs should coordinate with one another. So whoever wants to kick that off, I think let's start there.
Well, I think the first step with THEC may be dual enrollment. A student's first connection to THEC may be with the THEC student portal, and students getting into that and getting going with that, moving on to Promise connections, then completing the FAFSA. So we do all have to definitely coordinate and work together system-wise here at THEC with the lovely TSEC student portal. So that's my 2 cents on the way we are initially all connected.
Go ahead, Jen.
And so kind of once you get past dual enrollment and get into the programs that James and I administer or oversee, the staff who administer those, which, by the way, if you're curious, Bill Heath is the one that does Promise and Reconnect, and Shana Rab is the one that does TSAA. They do a fantastic job with those programs. But the FAFSA is really, of course, with Tennessee Promise and Reconnect, there are applications, but the FAFSA is also a very important step there. So the earlier the student does the FAFSA, the better. Not only does Promise have deadlines of when they have to have the FAFSA done, but TSAA is awarded on a first come, first served basis. We do award to renewal students through our deadline, and then we go in and we start doing new students. As a matter of fact, Monday we will be sending out notices to have done our first batch for 26, 27 for TSAA for new students up through February 1st. And so the earlier they do that, the more likely they are to be able to be considered for that if SAI is in the appropriate range. But several of my programs rely on James's programs to be awarded before them because Promise and Reconnect come in after TELS. So I don't know why he wanted me to go first, but
I don't know. I figured I would just try to tie it all together. I have, I don't know. I have the larger of the programs, but I do agree that Tennessee Promise being last dollar, Tennessee Reconnect being last dollar, Hope does have to pay, or Wilder Navy that does have to pay. So, what was the question again? Sorry, I got distracted by Caitlin and I was listening to Jen. Just where do you want me to go with this? I can easily answer her question, but how do our programs all stack and tie together? Correct?
I'm
correct.
Okay.
That's what we were talking about.
So ultimately, yeah, right. So ultimately, from the spectrum of our financial aid programs, as Jana and Jen have both alluded to, dual enrollment kicks us off for 9th and 10th graders at the TCATs, juniors, seniors at our 2-year, 4-year institutions or the TCATs. And then you have middle college, potentially for those students as well. And then you graduate with your 3.0 or your 21. Maybe you've done the Tennessee Promise Scholarship application as a senior. You've done your FAFSA, then you enroll, and all of the programs other than dual enrollment and middle college start stacking together, right? So you got your Pell Grant, you got your Tennessee Student Assistance Award, you got your Hope Scholarship. If you are a Pell Grant and a TSAA recipient and or a Hope Scholarship recipient, you're likely not going to get Tennessee Promise, just as we all know that from the function of how our financial aid and how the last dollar scholarship programs work and the blessing of the THEC and the institutions partnering to maintain a lower tuition, we're in a position where Pell, TSAA cover tuition and fees, right? So Tennessee Promise for about half of our students isn't necessary. But really, they all kind of function together. And one of the beauties of Tennessee Promise, and I do hope, but you all know I wore the Tennessee Promise hat for a decade. One of the beauties of it is, as you all know, most of your students who really haven't dug deeply into this may or may not get a penny of Tennessee Promise money, but Tennessee Promise is what's paying for their school. For better, for worse, you know, we can all have our thoughts of how that works in this process, but if they did the Tennessee Promise application in the fall of their senior year and they're going to a community college or a TCAT for free of tuition and fees, sorry, I've fallen into that F word conversation, right? If they're going to the TCAT or the community college free of tuition and fees, Tennessee Promise is paying for it, period. In their head, that's all that's paying for it, whether that's true or not. But ultimately, to me, that's a benefit of the program. It's a benefit of the messaging. It's a simplifying of the message. We all know that FAFSA is easier now than it was a decade ago, but it's still a confusing process, right? So it really all ties in, all stacks up together to get that student to the lowest balance we can get them to, right? And again, I appreciate Caitlin throwing a question out there, so I'll go ahead and kick us off with one. Go ahead, Jen.
Before you kick off on the questions, I do want to say that one thing that, and I did this as a person at the schools too, is encouraging students that even if they don't think they're going to need funding from Tennessee Promise, to go ahead and meet those criteria. They get a lot of support from the partnering organizations, and then students that are in certain categories may qualify for supports at certain schools. So just making sure that they meet those criteria, and it also gives them something to fall back on. It is possible for a student to lose federal aid due to satisfactory progress. You may have heard it referred to as SAP, but if they haven't lost promise, they may be able to fall back on that. So, you know, just encouraging them to meet those criteria, even if they don't expect to get money out of it, as a fallback or as a potential option, is always a good idea.
And before
now,
James,
I think,
I'll chime in right here too. From previous experience, Jen is exactly right, but I will also say I've had students in the past that didn't complete their promise applications because they were full Pell, and then the following year their parents' income dramatically shifted and they lost Pell altogether, and they didn't have promise, and therefore that's the result. So to echo that, couldn't agree more. Just promise, regardless if it's used or not. In their mind, it's still used, and it's always there. So, James.
Sure. So, and I'm trying to chat responses to the questions as we go through some of this as well. So, to Caitlin Sharp asked the question: are Hope and Promise scholarships impacted if a student's family moves out of state after the student graduates and begins attending college in Tennessee? I think this is probably one that Jason C. kind of posited for me as I was about to leave the office yesterday. We had a whole discussion about residency and potential issues. So I'm going to say it depends. As with any financial aid response, it depends. Now, if the student has enrolled at an eligible institution, so let's say the student graduates from McGavick. That's my alma mater, my high school alma mater. Student graduates from McGavick, enrolls at Nashville State. Mom and dad are in Tennessee. They're Tennessee residents when the student enrolls at Nashville State. During the fall semester, mom and dad move off to Kentucky, to Elkton, as Jason and I discussed, because, he is from Elkton. I'm not an original person. I use life experience here to tell my stories. In that situation, so long as the student has enrolled at an eligible college and maintains continuous enrollment, fall, spring, until they graduate, that student would maintain eligibility. We have policy in place that would allow that student to maintain eligibility. They may lose TSAA eligibility because that student could become a non-resident from a TSAA perspective, I believe, although I think we've even got policy for TSAA. That's a gray area for me, so I may defer to Jen, may even have Tim or Pete chime in the chat. They are our bosses. They joined us to keep us in line. Now, another scenario that I actually had, I've encountered with UT Knoxville and an actual student at their school. Student graduated, enrolled at an out-of-state institution, and a regionally accredited out-of-state, Western Kentucky. Again, non-original, but again, that's how we're going to tell the story. Enrolled at Western Kentucky, met the 16-month requirement. They were a Tennessee resident. Parents were here. While the student was at Western, parents moved out of state. Then the student attempted to transfer to an eligible institution in Tennessee. That student is ineligible because that student never enrolled at an eligible institution. So that the continuous enrollment requirement there doesn't apply because the student never enrolled. So that's why I stress that it truly does depend. It's very situational. Ultimately, and if we get into parsing out residency questions of like, well, parents are here, parents are there, we will always defer to the institution. Now, another scenario, again, to use Jason here, I live in Elkton, but I go to Northeast High School in Clarksville. I live in Elkton, Kentucky. That student will never be eligible because that student is a resident of the state of Kentucky. Okay, so we would always stress to that student, you need to speak to, in that example, you need to contact KIA, which is the THEC equivalent in Kentucky that awards the Kentucky Keys, I believe it is, scholarship. So just as an example, or if you use a student at Catoosa that lives in Catoosa County, Georgia, that goes to school in Chattanooga, that student is a Georgia resident. That student is not eligible for our Tennessee Hope Scholarship. Or a student that lives up in Virginia and goes to a school in the Bristol area. Forgive me, I've only, I'm not as familiar with that area. But again, just giving examples of bordering counties. If you live in that out-of-state county, you are a resident of that state. You are not a Tennessee resident, so you would not be eligible. So I hope that does answer that question.
The next one looks like it's mine.
Go for it.
All right. So for students that graduate in December of their senior year, what steps do they need to complete to be eligible for Tennessee Promise for the spring semester? We just did these. We call them the early enrollees. So if they graduate from between August to December, we would consider them an early enrollee. They would still do their Tennessee Promise application in November. So this year it was November 3rd because that's when the date fell. And then they were required to do their FAFSA and their community service by January 12th. And we are up to 16 hours of community service now. Those that are enrolling in the fall semester, it's due by August 1st, but those that were early enrollees for spring or summer, they had to do the 25-26 FAFSA and their community service by January 12th. So that's how that, we'll post those dates as we get closer next year. The partnering organizations are aware of those dates and do work with the students that apply. And if we know they're early grad when they do their application, obviously we work with those, but sometimes we find those out later. So as soon as the student realizes they're early grad, if they can, be sure and let us know or let their partnering organization know so that we can make sure that they're getting that communication and keeping them on track for getting those early dates done. Yeah, I think the next one is yours, James.
Do you want to attempt to do that one here, James, or take care of this next one offline?
I mean, I will. Are we talking about from Michelle Willis?
I was looking at
Sherry.
Or Sherry. Okay, yeah. So I will. Jana and I will email Sherry to discuss that offline because again, a student who is enrolled, who's in the 9th grade, and Jana, if I overstep, jump in here. My understanding, if you're a 9th or 10th grader, you would be eligible to participate at to receive the DEG at a TCAT in 11th and 12th, or in and then 11, 12 at a TCAT or a community college. It may have something. I don't know. I'm not as familiar with early college, high school. So I will, Sherry, I'll reach out. Jana and I will reach out, and we'll have a offline discussion to figure out what may be going on there. Okay.
And I think some of that is going to come down to the agreements that the high schools have with the TCATs, whether a TCAT comes in and is willing to partner with the high school on some of those things. So, that part, THEC, this group of people specifically doesn't really have any kind of control over. But as far as literally a student being eligible as a 9th or 10th grader at a TCAT, yes. As far as a TCAT partnering with you, that would be out of this group's realm.
Yeah. So I think this next one, maybe I'll let Jen and I might even chime in. So are there ways in which the direct admissions program will communicate to students who apply that Tennessee Promise is not available at our four-year institutions? Jen, I mean, go.
There actually are a few institutions that do have Tennessee Promise eligible programs. And if you were to Google Tennessee Promise eligible institutions, that would pull up for you that list. And so like Austin P, I think TSU has one program that's eligible. And we've got other private schools and stuff too. And yes, thank you, Suzette. Suzette put the link in the chat for us all. So there are some four-year schools that they can do that. And then the UT programs, the ones that have UT Promise, it is not the same thing as Tennessee Promise, but they do require those students to meet those Tennessee Promise requirements. So the application deadline, the FAFSA deadline, all that. So if they're going to a UT school, they're still going to want to do the Tennessee Promise information because currently UT requires that for the UT Promise. So beyond that, I was trying to find one of the templates to look and see the exact wording, but I could not find it offhand.
Yeah,
Dustin,
we have language that draws attention to the fact that Tennessee Promise can only be used towards an associate's degree or technical certificate, and so the language then applies to any institution that offers associate's degree programs or technical certificates. So James.
I was just going to add that outside of direct admissions, our partnering organizations have always done their best to communicate with students who have declared a four-year college while still maintaining their Tennessee Promise eligibility, that your institution of choice isn't an eligible institution. So we're not going to tell you have to change that. They're truly institution neutral while supporting these students through the Tennessee Promise pipeline, but they do their best to communicate to these students that they are they have indicated an eligible institution. So that would be not directly DA related, but in support of DA at this time. Now, as we all know, do our 16, 17, 18-year-old senior students read every email that they get? We all know that the case there is no, or the truth there is no. But again, I do know that they make every effort to communicate that to the students in support of all of our initiatives. So.
I'm gonna grow this next question, and I'm going to use Michelle and regarding students and their HOPE eligibility, and I want to just grow that one out a little bit for everybody. So speak to us about yes, it's a 3.0 or 21 on the 3.0 unweighted or 21 to earn the HOPE. Talk to us all about the eligibility necessary to maintain HOPE and then how that works. And probably I want to grow that a little bit. Your best advice on how to communicate that to students to soak that in. What steps should they take to maximize their HOPE eligibility?
Sure. So this is something, if you had, and again, I harken back to nearly 11 or 12 years ago when I was on the outreach team. One of the things I would always stress when I would do a presentation and we would talk about benchmarks, we would talk about HOPE continuing eligibility. The most important thing I can stress to a student as they're going through this process is that it's not going to be easy, right? We all know that. And to this exact scenario, it's absolutely not going. This is an uphill battle for this student. But the most important thing I can stress to the student is you have to have a 3.0 in your crosshairs from the very first class that you take. Your goal should be a 3.0 from the start to the end. Now, in this scenario that's been described, a 3.0 is a very tall order. And so this student may or may not, they may be closer to a 2.75 in the beginning, but you have to maintain that the 3.0 has to be my ultimate goal, because as you know, at 24 it's a 2.75, at 48 it's a 2.75, but at 72 it's a 3.0. And as we all know from experience with students, the grade point average is compounding as you go along. It gets harder to move the needle the deeper you get. And so the closer to that 3.0 you can be from the beginning, the better. Now, directly to her question, are there discussions around the equity of the requirement based on their major? I will say that not currently, to my knowledge, are there conversations related to different GPA benchmark requirements based upon different majors. I will, I'm not going to argue the merit of that conversation, but I will say that to my knowledge, currently there are no conversations where it would break down like a GPA for this major, a GPA for this major, and so on and so forth. We also have, while weighing the merits of student, the equity of that, we also do have to balance all of that with some dose of institutional burden from an administrative perspective, because there are significant burdens that would come into play with trying to administer in that manner as well. Another thing that we always try to counsel students on, and we try to stress this to our school counselors, and I know that our financial aid offices do their best to try to stress this to students as well. As you're going through this process, once you get enrolled at the college, if you're struggling, don't just go to your advisor and drop the class, please. You need to talk to your financial aid office. Talk to your advisor. Hopefully your advisor has been properly trained and will stress for you to discuss this with the financial aid office. There are impacts on your future eligibility when you drop courses. Okay, if you drop it too early, there could be a return of state and federal money. If you drop too many, there could be a permanent loss of eligibility associated with the dropping of courses and the return of money. All of those things could play a role. So as we, a question we often get from a student that's considering dropping a course, will I have to repay my money? The answer is often no, but truly it depends. It's going to depend on when you drop the course. That's, again, yet another reason to discuss with the financial aid office the impacts of dropping a course. I often caution a student or caution anyone to tell a student, well, just fail the course because it's in the best interest of you to just fail the course if you're already failing it. But ultimately, from a Hope Scholarship perspective, it may be in your better interest. If you're earning a D right now, earn the D rather than drop the course, because dropping the course could lead to permanent eligibility loss. Earning the D just keeps you moving forward toward, at least you're making you're not losing the scholarship. You didn't pass the class, there's no progress toward graduation, but you didn't lose the scholarship just because you dropped the class. So there's a balance there of, obviously we don't want anyone to fail a class, but if they do, that has to be front of mind as they're working through that process.
But they need to continue attending the class, because if they stop out, that can cause issues. That would be considered an unofficial withdrawal. So anytime a student's advised to stay in the class and, because it's better to take the F, they need to continue going to class and trying.
I'm going to interrupt because we also have questions coming through the Q&A portion in addition to chat. So I'm going to kind of bounce back and forth between the two. All right, open question. If a student were eligible for the Hope Lottery at the time of graduation and went directly into the military after graduation, are they still eligible for Hope once they exit the military? The student has not attended any colleges after leaving the military. Is there a time period when they can enroll in a Tennessee college?
The short answer is yes. That student is, so long as they graduated Hope eligible, they are, upon return, or they must be discharged with the fully honorable discharge to then qualify for the Hope Scholarship, so long as they graduated eligible. And forgive me, there is a time frame in which they do have to enroll after they have been discharged. As Jenn took her role in November, I also took my role in November. So that is an area that I don't have that front of mind. There is a time frame. I will share it with Dustin to share out to you guys, unless Tim or Pete want to throw me a lifeline and put it in the chat for me. Maybe not. They're gonna watch me hang here. That's okay. But yes, ultimately, a student who graduates eligible, joins the military, could then, upon discharge with the fully honorable discharge, could utilize the Hope Scholarship. Tim's going to post it for me. Thank you, sir.
Oh, you should have let them hang in.
Right?
Thanks, James. I think next up back in chat is going to be Martha's question. I have a student that's currently enrolled in her first year middle college with Rome State. It's recently been brought to her attention that our local TCAT is going to offer dual enrollment for the Surge Tech program. She believes that she should be successful in both programs her senior year, and she was wondering if she could use dual enrollment funds for TCAT while enrolled in middle college. Our students are able to use dual enrollment grant for both schools, but we have never had one in middle college attend both schools, Rome State and TCAT, wondering what her best options would be.
So I
I feel
did.
like that's a Jana answer.
Yep. So I answered just in writing so everybody can have the
Ah,
answer to it as well. So students cannot be paid middle college and dual enrollment at the same time. So um, these would be two separate programs, the Roan State Middle College and the TCAT classes. So the student, if they choose to stay a middle college student receiving middle college funds, they would essentially be out of pocket for the TCAT classes. However, that middle college student can um, be paid as a dual enrollment student for their middle college courses. They're just not going to get paid as many classes, and the award amount's not going to be as much. But they could be paid for their Rome State classes and the TCAT classes as a dual enrollment student. So it's essentially a decision the student's going to have to make as far as if they're a senior. I'm trying to choose my words wisely here because if they're a senior and they've been doing middle college, it may behoove the student to switch and become a dual enrollment student for the sake of hours. And if the TCAT courses are important to them, again, to switch and become a dual enrollment. I'm air quoting here, become a dual enrollment student as opposed to a middle college student at that point. So is there a right or wrong answer here? Or is there a straight cut answer here? No. It's would have to come down to what is the student's end goal and what are they essentially wanting to accomplish and what can they afford out of pocket is what it's going to come down to.
thanks for that. Sorry, I didn't read far enough ahead to see you already
That's
answering and
okay. You're
typing. I like to
good.
do
You're
things
good.
twice around here, and so, um, so, okay. Britton also posted in Q&A, but then I think anyway, I'll get to it. Have a student who graduated high school May 25. TSAC portal says he's still eligible for promise 25-26, wanting to go to TCAT the summer trimester, fall trimester. How many service hours do they need to have by what date? I thought it was 24, April 1st. Jen.
Okay. So on this one, we may have to go offline a little bit because if they graduated May of 25 and have never not enrolled before at all, they may have an appeal that has been approved or something if they're still showing eligible. So it may be just a little bit different. But generally, we talked about the early grads having to, or early enrollees having to have the hours by January 12th. If it is a continuing student, they have to have their hours by April 1st for summer term. And it's the 8 hours, but then they still have the 16 hours for August 1st that are due for the next year. And there's only 32 hours total in the program that are needed. So they can go as far back as their junior year to submit hours, their junior year of high school to submit hours. So if they wanted to do all 32 hours up front, they could, but they just have to do at least the minimum by the August 1st deadline for fall. And once the 32 hours are met, they're done with their community service for the program.
Thanks, Jen.
I don't think that fully answers that because I need a little more information, but that at least
And
answers in general.
I will say, Jen, I had to give Dustin more grief. I had also chatted essentially exactly what you said, and I asked Britton to email us at thec.8info so we could review the student because, to your point, if the student is still showing as eligible, it sounds like the TCAT may have certified them as being on a wait list, which would then basically roll the hours forward. So we wouldn't necessarily need additional hours for spring, but we would need the 16 for the fall, to your point. So I kind of literally detailed almost word for word in shorter words what you said. So
listen, I was completely
and saying
transparent that I like
things.
to do things twice. I mean, I'm just so. I should reread it a third time for emphasis. So I'm scrolling through to see. I don't think.
Let me answer Jenny Rosenberger.
Okay, do
that. So eligibility for a Penn Foster or other out-of-state homeschool high school, are they eligible for Tennessee Promise, Hope, and TSAA? The answer is ultimately that the student must be a resident of Tennessee. They can graduate from Penn Foster. They could graduate from Abeka. They could graduate from name your out-of-state homeschool high school. There is a small list of these schools, and I should have had that pulled up in front of me. There's a not, oh, and see, it's in my saved Excel list. So as I ramble while I try to get it to pull up, there is a small list of accredited online high schools that are classified by the Tennessee Department of Education as Category 3 private schools. So while we would on some level consider these schools homeschools because the student is in essence in high school while at home, which is to me, to a layperson like myself, the definition of homeschool. They are classified as Category 3 private schools. So and we're happy to share this list if you just want to see it as a high school counselor, or we do make it available to our college partners as well. But if the student graduates from one of these schools, and let me just as an example, what's on here that would be classified? I'm trying to think of. I was just flipping through the list. Excel High School is actually one that we encounter with some reasonable level of frequency. It's out of Minnesota. It is classified as a Category 3 private school, or a Category 3 non-public. So a student could technically graduate with either a GPA or an ACT from that high school. Another that's on here. Actually, Acellus Academy is another. I've seen seen it a number of times. It's out of Missouri. Again, it's classified as a Category 3. Thank you, Jana. But in those instances, and Penn Foster being a homeschool program, ultimately the student has to be a resident of Tennessee. But yes, they could qualify for Promise, Hope, or TSAA, or TSAA. And to as part of the response to that, where I think Charles had made a comment around concerns with homeschool and Penn Foster students, and we do make every effort we can to make those students aware of our programs. I know in the past I've partnered with Bill, and we have identified homeschool contacts in every county across the state, and we share information to them that they then make available to their homeschool students. And we've shared information to the department, who then coordinates with their homeschool newsletter to make information available to them. But as we all know, there's no perfect mechanism to identify a homeschool student to then make them aware of the information. So it is a challenge. It is an uphill battle for all of us, to Charles's point.
And we're continuing that work of trying to figure out where we can improve that area. I will say, in the meantime, students that do graduate from those areas that really truly didn't know, they can go through our appeal process, and that is taken into consideration.
I want to open up a new conversation quickly, because as we're pivoting towards conclusion, let's all of you all talk briefly about the dual enrollment grant, Tennessee Promise Scholarship, and earning a credential. All of, with the dual enrollment classes, both of the TCATs and at the community college, or even some four-year institutions, leading to an associate's degree or bachelor's degree. We want to stress the importance of students taking advantage of dual enrollment classes towards a credential, not just taking a dual enrollment class for the sake of taking a dual enrollment class. So I want to open up a conversation with you all about what advice could you share with counselors on how to help manage that in the student's best interest towards a credential.
You want to start this one off, James, or you want me to?
Go for it.
All right, I'm going to start it off from the perspective of, if they get a credential, what happens with Promise. So if they are with a TCAT and they get a certificate or a diploma, they can still move on to a community college and get, or a TCAT in the fall semester after they graduate from high school. If they get an associate's degree, that is a terminating event, even though they weren't getting it with Promise. That does end that Promise eligibility. Which, if they're able to get their associates through the dual enrollment program or the middle college program, is more likely, but through dual enrollment or through the middle college program, scholarship program, then no, they're not eligible for promise, but there's going to be less needed to finish them out to their bachelor's degree. So it may still be very much to their benefit to do that. They just need to be aware that that associate's degree will actually terminate that. If a student is in high school and they finish their program in the summer after high school graduation and they complete a diploma, but they're not receiving promise, again, it's okay. If they get promise that summer and they complete a diploma at that TCAT, that does count as a terminating event. So it depends on when they complete the program and what they're receiving at the time they would complete the program, unless it's an associate's degree, in which case that's just a ending for promise. So on to you, James and Jana.
Sure. So from a HOPE and a NAFI perspective, Wilder NAFI Technical Skills Grant, there are a couple of pathways to discuss. So if you so DE from the dual enrollment perspective and how it impacts your HOPE scholarship. For someone who's been doing this a number of years, maybe like Catherine at Hume Fogg, you may recall that in the past we had some tapping into HOPE scholarship funds. You're borrowing your HOPE scholarship to use for dual enrollment. We don't do any of that anymore. So DE to HOPE, there's no direct impact on your funding availability. There's no direct impact on initial or continuing eligibility because those courses don't count toward your HOPE scholarship GPA. But let's focus more on the stackability of how you might build upon credentials, and even it ties in a little bit of Tennessee Promise. So we'll start with NAFI. Let's say you graduate, you go to TCAT Nashville, you're pursuing a diploma program in something. So long as you complete a diploma using Wilder NAFI and you graduated eligible, you can then go on within 3 years and participate utilizing the HOPE scholarship. Okay, so that is an option to stack credentials using NAFI to HOPE. If you used NAFI and Promise and did a diploma, you would lose Promise, and then you could continue on and use your HOPE scholarship after you complete the diploma. Now, if you did a certificate and then you attempted to transfer into so if you receive Wilder NAFI, complete a certificate, and then say, I don't really want to complete that 1,296 clock hour diploma. I now want to transfer on to use my HOPE scholarship at a 4-year institution. Unfortunately, in that instance, because you did not complete a diploma program, that student is no longer eligible for the HOPE scholarship. There's statutory language that requires the student complete a diploma and then continue on, and then you're able to continue on and utilize the HOPE scholarship. Now, to tie in Tennessee Promise and how it stacks, and to Jenn's example of the middle college student that got the associate degree that, quote unquote, unfortunately became ineligible for Tennessee Promise. I've always struggled with calling that an unfortunate situation, but they became ineligible for Tennessee Promise. But the good news is you have up to 5 years to utilize the HOPE scholarship or completion of an advanced degree. So that student who did the 2 years using middle college or DEG and completed the associate degree while they were in high school and graduating with the associate degree could then utilize HOPE for the next 2 to 3 years on their bachelor's degree, and then they would have 2 to 3 years to utilize that for their advanced degree as well if they wanted to go that route. So just again, from a stackability perspective, not only could you use this in pursuit of your associate degree while in high school using middle college and or your a diploma at the TCAT, but then you could transfer on and use it in pursuit of a bachelor's degree and or advanced degree within the 5 years after graduation. Okay, I hope that helps provide some clarity there.
And I'm going to double down and provide additional emphasis here because I still think that there are counselors and students across the state that still are not informed that the HOPE scholarship is 5 years or through earning the advanced degree. I mean, there's so much value now. It's one of the best things Tennessee did a couple of years ago, I think now. And James, correct me, when we say advanced degree, like it can pay for dental school, medical school, PT school up through either they earn the degree or the expiration of 5 years. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So yes, the student can. So if you finish your bachelor's degree in 3 years, and then you do have to maintain continuous enrollment, but then you enrolled at another eligible institution. So let's say you finished at UT Chattanooga, finish your bachelor's, and then you want to go on and do an MBA at UT Knoxville. You could then enroll at UT Knoxville and receive funding for the 2 remaining years of your Hope Scholarship in pursuit of that advanced degree, or pharmacy at ETSU. Let's say, because technically for a pharmacy program, you don't have to even finish a bachelor's degree. You could just get admitted, and you all know this. You have been able to do that, but let's say you actually finish your bachelor's and then go into pharmacy school at ETSU. You can absolutely do that. And then you've got up to 5 years to use it. And is that a good place to pause and answer a question? Debbie asked a question.
So let's pivot to that one. Thank you for that. If a student graduates high school, then attends an out-of-state college for 1, 2, 3 years, can they come back to Tennessee and be Hope Scholarship eligible?
So the answer is it depends. Yes, so long as the institution is, and it's regionally accredited. So in our area, it would be a SAC COC accredited college, but we have a list of the accrediting bodies that would approve our colleges. So you think of again, Western Kentucky, University of North Carolina, Harvard, Yale, those accredited institutions, that student could enroll there. Now I will stress, and Debbie, in your question, you specifically said in year 2. I want to stress that so long as that student enrolls at a regionally accredited institution within 16 months, that student has established the enrollment requirement, and at that point they could transfer back in to Dustin's kind of modification of the question. At any point, that student could transfer back in and utilize the Hope Scholarship so long as they meet continuing eligibility requirements. The key is that they had you have to enroll at a regionally accredited institution, not just an eligible institution, regionally accredited institution within 16 months. Now, one caveat to that is the student who may be looking to utilize the advanced degree portion of their Hope Scholarship. In that example, the student must have enrolled at an eligible institution prior to graduation and received and been here, whether they were eligible or not, that they had to have been here prior to completion of the bachelor's degree to then take advantage of the advanced degree portion. Okay.
No, I think that's.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay. Cool.
We're pivoting towards closure. Connect all these things to reconnect, and then we'll have some closing thoughts after that.
So, of course, Reconnect is for our adult students, those that are over age 23 or older or independent on the FAFSA. So it is possible for somebody straight out of high school to be a Reconnect recipient if they didn't meet those promised criteria. For the most part, I believe most students that could do one or the other typically do Promise first. But should they lose Promise, they could actually at that point apply for Reconnect. Reconnect does stack just like Promise does. It's the last dollar scholarship. And I think one of the things we didn't mention earlier that might be really good to mention is the last dollar scholarship. It covers mandatory tuition and fees, or tuition and mandatory fees. So it's not going to cover things like digital course materials, classroom fees, online fees, things like that. So it may not completely cover everything. When we look at that, we take that mandatory tuition or tuition and mandatory fees, and we deduct the Pell Grant, the TSAA state grant, any lottery scholarship funds that they're receiving, and any scholarships that are specific to tuition and fees only from that before we determine what that last dollar amount might be. But it is extremely important for students that are only getting Promise or only getting Reconnect to understand that it may not cover everything, because there's going to be some charges that are either not mandatory fees, and by mandatory fees, that means every student is charged that, or they have digital course materials or books or something that must be covered. And so that's kind of how, Reconnect just stacks in just like the others do, and has the same as far as degree requirements and stuff. It has the same cutoff of the associate's degree or at a TCAT, that diploma.
Awesome. Let's do this. For our three panelists from each of your areas, any final thoughts, but then provide the counselors or anyone in attendance your best piece of advice from your area. And I'm just going to keep it with you, Jen. So
Okay.
wrap
All
it up, and
right.
then your one piece of one best piece of advice.
Okay. One of the biggest things I would stress is for students to fill out the applications, meet those deadlines, and to do their FAFSA early. Early. So like they're doing their Tennessee Reconnect or Tennessee Promise application in October after the FAFSA opens, go ahead and do that FAFSA at the same time. Get those done early so that they can be considered for those early deadline funds, or the funds that end quickly. And really, that's my kind of soapbox at the moment. Do the FAFSA early. If you have questions, reach out to us. That TSAC.aidinfo@tn.gov is a fantastic place to get answers, or you can reach out to any of us personally. Ask questions. You know that sometimes the scenarios are just very much individual to the student. It's hard sometimes to give those blanket answers, so we'll be more than glad to look at them.
Jana, final thoughts, best piece of advice from your area.
So we've all experienced like the major changes with dual enrollment this year, with students being allowed to enter multiple institutions on their dual enrollment grant applications. My stress is preach to your students, only list the institutions that they're taking dual enrollment classes at, not where they intend on going after they graduate. Another good tidbit of advice on their THEC student portals, using a personal email instead of their school emails. Once they leave you all, they don't have access to that email address anymore to get back into their account later if they have issues. So those are my two tidbits at the moment.
And I just love having the power to make him go last. James Snider, final thoughts and best piece of advice from your years of experience.
The one man, and he acts like I have no manners to let the ladies go first. Sheesh. So, and this actually speaks to a little bit of dual enrollment, and it's one of the things we were hoping would come up, and just stressing, as Jana kind of alluded to, some of the changes that we've encountered over the past year. One of the main ones is to allow schools to certify money for their students, and for their students like that may be enrolled at multiple institutions. In the past, we've required consortium agreements, but we have removed the requirement for consortiums. But like if you're enrolled at TCAT Nashville and Nashville State, both of those institutions have to request money on their own, but in order. And so it's very important, the order that the student selects them in is the order in which they will be certified. So that's a very important nuance here. So if they're at Nashville State and TCAT Nashville, and TCAT Nashville's first and Nashville State's second, but they're getting a bill from Nashville State, it may be because TCAT Nashville hasn't certified them yet, and it's just a communication kind of breakdown. So if they start to see that stuff, reach out. We can help kind of navigate that. But my bit of advice, and it's a promise soapbox, it's a hope soapbox, it's a DE soapbox, it's all of them. Stressing to the students, to Jana's point of using a personal email, no matter what email they use, they have to read the emails. We do everything we can to communicate with these students, as you know. We don't text as much as our partners, but we do use our email. Our partners use email. Our institutions use email. They're going to get an institutional email address. They have to check that. They're going to get access to like RadarNet at Roane State. They're going to get that at Nashville State, at Roane State, at wherever. They have to check their email. That just has to become a regular thing. We all live in email. We all love and or likely hate email. But they've got to get used to using it. That's where everything's going. They're getting every communication that matters through email, except that DA letter that they're getting in the mail. But again, everything, they've got to use their email. They've got to check it. That anytime that they find out something 3 months too late, it was probably emailed to them 3 months ago, right? Those are the types of things we have to stress to them. And I know you guys are doing it. But yes, and to Jen's point that she chatted, they have to ask the questions, the students. As I sit here with a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, and I'm terrified by like telling Brody, hey buddy, you're gonna in 12 years you're gonna be the one asking those questions. But truly, they have to be the ones asking those questions, even outside of the fact that federal law kind of stipulates that they have to be the one to ask those questions. It's really just a best practice to get them out there and asking those questions and stressing to them that we're here to help them. So are our college partners. They might be stressed, they might be busy, but ultimately they want to help, right? So do we. Don't hesitate to email us. Tell them don't hesitate to email us. Thank you guys. I got 2 minutes. I will use them if Dustin will let me. But again, just thank you guys for joining us. He's giving me the hook with his face. Everyone have a wonderful weekend. Thank you guys.
So I'm going to double down on that. Counselors, encourage your students to install their school email account on their phone. It's harder to ignore when it's on their phone and they're on it every day. That's one of the best practices I came across in all of my years. But James is exactly right. They've got to check these emails. It's just much harder to ignore when it's on their personal device rather than having to log in at a computer. So I would tell them to check it, but put it on their phone because all of them can do it. Let me thank our panelists today. I never made one crack about it's James, Jana, and Jenn. The 3 J's. There had to be a joke there somewhere, but thanks for everybody that attended today. I knew this would be a webinar with a lot of great questions. I will speak for all of our panelists. All of them are available to any of you to answer any questions offline to get the best advice that you need to help your students be successful. So take advantage of their expertise, take advantage of their passion for student success. You will never be misserved. So again, thanks everybody for joining today. Thanks to our panelists. I hope you all have had a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend. And reminder, March 27th, direct admissions one-off, a big old thing on direct admissions that day. We hope to see you then. Other than that, have a great rest of your day, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.